Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm your host, Hilmarie Hutchison, and today I'm so excited to introduce a guest whose story is all about resilience, reinvention, and transforming setbacks into success. Charlie Johnson is a fitness entrepreneur and digital business strategist who turned a struggling personal training career into a multi-million-dollar global coaching empire, all starting from a shed in his backyard. Wow. Today, he's stronger than ever, running a thriving coaching business that helps fitness professionals and entrepreneurs build brands, financial freedom, and unstoppable confidence. Charlie, welcome and thank you so much for joining me today.
Big thank you, and thank you very much for the kind intro. My goal today is just to give as much value and insight as possible to try and help anyone who wants to try and take their life to the next level.
Before we dive into your incredible transformation and success, can you tell us about your background? Where did your journey begin, and what were some of the early experiences that shaped who you are today?
I would say I was lucky, or maybe right person, right place in a few times. I guess that's the story of many people's lives. When I grew up, I was from an upper middle class family. I went to private school, so I was exposed to elements of success from a fairly young age. My father had some very successful friends who I had the benefit of seeing what they were like. So I think that actually really molded my early worldview in terms of what was possible. Really, it came from being actually overweight and out of shape as a child and being almost fat and bullied at school, that then gave me probably a chip on my shoulder and maybe definitely an element of insecurity that then drove me into wanting to get in shape and then become a personal trainer when I was around 18, 19. The irony for what I do now versus back then is that when I first qualified as a personal trainer, they teach you how to legally train someone so they don't hurt themselves, but they teach you absolutely nothing about how to build a business and actually how to build a livelihood so you can support yourself from it. Whereas now what I actually spend every single day doing is helping people create wildly profitable fitness businesses so they can change people's lives and make money. So it's introverted in terms of how that's flipped around. But because I actually failed in the personal training job in 2008 at the first gym group in Guildford, I ended up becoming a real estate agent for 6-7 years and managing a branch in like a corporate estate agent for my sins. So that's where I've seen both sides of the coin. And that's where I'd also say that probably one of the biggest things that drives me now is to never have to go back to working within the corporate system.
Brilliant. Wow, that's quite a comprehensive background intro that you've given us. You have spoken openly, and you mentioned it in your intro there, about being overweight. What was the turning point that made you commit to change for good?
This wasn't the turning point, but it's like I would say a skeleton in my closet. I would remember being a child and being on a family holiday in Mallorca and overhearing my parents saying Charlie's gotten fat and arguing over what they were essentially going to do about it. And the fact that I still remember that now so vividly at 35, and I was probably like 10 to 12 years old at the time, probably says a lot. So I'd say that was probably something that really triggered it in my mind. And then the issue back then in my early teens is I knew no better, to the point where I remember going to Holland and Barrett and buying protein powder and hiding it under my bed because I thought I was going to get in trouble. And I was like really into sports as a kid, but then as everyone would know now, or people now are starting to understand, you can't out exercise a bad diet. And that was just from a lack of fundamental understanding and education, which I think is one of the big gaps in the traditional education system we have within the Western world.
So I think that's one of the key things you mentioned there, lack of education, not really understanding how food and fitness go together to be healthy. You also mentioned in your intro about working in real estate. I know that you were working 60-hour weeks when you first launched your fitness brand from a garden shed. That was quite a leap. What gave you the courage to pursue your own path?
I realized working for someone else was a ceiling and I could never get past that. I would actually even say it was a point of huge frustration because I remember the company I worked with, and which is funny now in hindsight, bear in mind what I do now, is I remember badging onto them about social media, you need to do X, Y, Z. And there's this big corporate company who like everyone thinks they know better because they're older. And then the irony is I'm the one who then left and made millions and millions and millions from learning how to sell stuff online and market online because they weren't willing to do it. So I'd say an element of it was frustration. Second was wanting to have control of my own destiny. And thirdly was just a big thing I've always wanted, which was to have freedom. I wanted to have time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. And I knew spending 60 to 70 hours a week working in estate agents and an hour and a half a day commuting on the M25 was not the life I wanted to live for the next 25, 30 years.
So that was a a really good reason to then make that change. You mentioned social media. I know you've scaled your business to incredible heights using digital tools and social media. What were the key strategies that helped you succeed online?
I would say that at the beginning, if I'm radically transparent, there wasn't a huge amount of clear, concise strategy. It was just an understanding that this was a vehicle I could get attention for free online that then I could monetize. And I saw proof of concept of other people starting to do it. And I was like, well, if they can do it, then why can't I? And I think this is where people put massive limiting beliefs on themselves in terms of what they can achieve given any time frame. And this is where I say to anyone now, like, if you want to, for example, build a really successful online business, has someone else done the thing you wanted to do? Yes, then that means you can do it too. And I think a lot of people would also say in every industry that every industry is saturated. I currently live in Dubai and I'm looking out the window over beautiful yachts and things going past in Dubai Marina. And real estate is a big industry here, for example. And people say the industry is saturated, but it's saturated because there's a lot of money in the industry, which means people are coming into the market. So I'd say that the biggest thing is people just removing their limiting beliefs that they can actually achieve these things.
Absolutely. So it's our own limiting beliefs that hold us back from accomplishing things that's actually possible. And because you had seen others succeed in the space, you knew that it was possible. But I think also getting in early probably was also very helpful in getting you started, that you didn't wait till everyone was doing social media. You got started once you could see that there was something in it. So you noticed the trend that maybe others missed at the time. Everything came crashing down. Can you walk us through what happened and how you found the strength to start over?
Yeah, so I would say it's an interesting paradigm that happens to a young man when he goes from making $3,000 a month to $300,000 a month in a short period of time. I effectively 100x my monthly income, and I probably started to lose my head a little bit at the end of November 2021 because it maybe perplexed me a little bit to the point then that I, due to tax reasons and other things, I decided that I wanted to move to Dubai, which was then going to force me to then essentially get divorced from a long-term relationship, a partner, and I had to make the difficult decision of an inflection point for me in life, like a big pivoting point of, am I going to go and stay in the one town I've always been from, or am I going to fucking burn the boats and go all in and chase the dreams and things I wanted to do? And I decided to go for the latter and burn the boats and go all in. It's not funny in hindsight, but what happened on the 6th of January, I ended up ending a 10-year relationship. The 7th of January, I ended up clearing out my personal house of all my personal possessions, basically giving away everything I owned. And then on the 8th of January, I was about to speak on a really big podcast, sitting in a hotel in Kingston in London, the Hilton, and my Instagram account got disabled, which at the time was probably 90% of my revenue, like making $200,000 a month maybe from this account. And I was like, this is fun. So my personal life is in tatters. My business is now looking pretty on the ropes. And that was a time I look back that was very character building, but it's a good story to tell. And I always try and frame these things now when they happen to people is that there's always a lesson you can learn from these situations. That was one of the best things that happened to me, but I just didn't realize at the time.
What a huge challenge to face. Everything, what's the saying, when it rains, it pours, right? Everything happening at the same time. Then making that decision to move to Dubai, rebuilding your life from the ground up, that must have been a huge adjustment for you. What mindset shift helped you through that transition?
This is some advice that actually was actually a fitness client of mine who's worth hundreds of millions said to me, is that when you're crushing it and you're killing it in life, this will pass. When you're struggling and this is really difficult, like, this too shall pass. The key is just keep going. And the way I always think is like, what's the other option? I could like hide under the duvet and hide under my bed and just give up, or I can just keep going. And I think number one most important skill people need to have in business is resilience. And that's your ability to get back to baseline quickly from a very stressed situation. And in my opinion, a lot of society is very much weakened now to the point where people can't handle these stresses. And it's actually ironic when you think about it from a physiological standpoint that we now do things to actually make life more difficult, like doing ice baths and weird stuff like that, because our society has become very soft in terms of we have such a manufactured lifestyle, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I was listening to another podcast yesterday, and they were saying that some of the things we do because we think we're being nice to make, for example, old people will carry their bags and we'll let them sit and wait, and we'll do things for them because we're being polite and kind. But actually, what they need is to be moving, to be carrying their own bags, to be using their muscles and their bones, because that actually ends up keeping them healthier. So some of the things we do come back to bite us a little bit because we do have too much comfort in our lives these days.
Something I would actually add into that is that what you just said there about comfort. I was at an event at the weekend with one of the best marketers in the world, and what he actually said really profoundly hit me. And it was that when he has two options with a business or a marketing decision or strategy decision, is he always generally tries to take the harder one because it's normally the harder one that has the biggest payoff that less people are willing to do.
That makes absolute sense. So if we have for ourselves, this is a good lesson. When there are two decisions to make, take the harder one because the payoff will be better. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. You now mentor other fitness professionals and entrepreneurs. You mentioned earlier about limiting beliefs. What's the most common mindset block or limiting belief that you see, and how do you help people overcome it?
The biggest limiting belief I see is that people think it can't be done, or they can't achieve a certain amount of revenue, or they can't get a certain amount of clients, or even if I look at, say, for example, people with online businesses, they think they don't have enough followers or they're not famous enough. And one of the most powerful things in life is what's called the law of exposure. Once you have been exposed to something, you cannot be unexposed. So one of the things we do within our business is we hold really big like mastermind events. We have like 100, 150 of the best trainers there in the world. And I'll give a great example. We had a girl come on stage 2-3 weeks ago here in Dubai at one of the events. She got an award for making $230,000 in a month at 24 years old. And there's guys in there who are like 45, 50 who make maybe $5,000 a month who say it can't be done. And then there's a girl half her age who's actually doing the exact thing, but like 50x bigger. And I think that's where when you physically see someone and meet them in person and realize they can do this, then why can't you? And I think that's where the human brain looks for signs of and signals that something is possible, and then people go all in. And the greatest example of this in human history and evolution is Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile. The people thought that breaking the 4-minute mile, you would die, and it's running for a mile in under 4 minutes. He basically broke the record, and then within 6 months, 24 other people did it because it was just a perception of what could be achieved, and also putting yourself in the right environment of people who are achieving big things.
Absolutely. Yes, I always think that's a fascinating example of limiting a belief. Well, there's also the saying that says, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you'll be right. So it is about that mindset and about what we believe. Sort of leads me to my next question. Your coaching focuses not just on physical transformation, but also on building core confidence. Why is confidence such an important part of the journey?
Confidence is key because it allows you to take calculated risks to go and bet on yourself. The reality is that being an entrepreneur and starting a business is an element of taking calculated risks. And even if I look, say, for example, in scaling our own businesses, I am gambling with an educated system on things like Facebook ads to try and continue to grow our business. So I think that's where people need to understand that if you do not have confidence, you will not then take the risks that you actually need to then grow in life and then also in business, because people are so afraid of failure that they then don't go and take the leap, if that makes sense.
Of 8,000 clients transformed, what has been, or do you have a memorable transformation story that you can share with us?
From a fitness aspect, I would say I remember a client who actually signed up. I actually spoke to him in the car and I was driving in Toronto in Canada. And I think he weighed like 550 pounds, a guy in like California. His name was Derek. And I literally he was like, oh, I don't know if I should do this. I was like, Derek, respectfully, like, how many people do you see who are if you're 50, how many people do you see who are like 550 pounds at 60 years old? He's like, none. So okay. So if you don't fix this, what do you think is going to happen? He's like, okay, I get your point. It was very emotional call, and he was obviously in tears and upset about the whole thing. The reality is, me being blunt and direct and honest with him allowed to change his life. I think he lost like 200 pounds. And that's the reality, that people have the ability to change other people's lives, which for me is the most fulfilling thing you can do, because that can then have a knock-on impact on multiple people's lives.
Yeah, that must be incredible to have that kind of impact. What he needed to hear was that honest feedback that you were willing to give to him, but then to work with him and see that amazing transformation must be quite a rewarding experience and quite a rewarding feeling to see the changes that you're making in other people's lives. That's absolutely brilliant. We mentioned at the beginning about the lack of education, and you also said as a child, not really knowing what to do about food and exercise and that. What is your take on diet culture today? How do you help your clients find balance without sacrificing enjoyment?
There's a business term for this, which I actually haven't thought about putting into a food term before, is the input and output equation of essentially all it is how many calories you consume and how many calories you burn, a very base model over probably a longer period of time than a day, but like a week. So I think the analogy that I'm a big believer in people can have the food they love and still lose weight, but it just has to be in measured, calculated amounts, and you can't have Cheesecake Factory every single night. But if you want to have it one night of the week, it's not going to be the end of the world, provided you tick all the other boxes. But the biggest reason most people don't see progress in their nutrition is it's basic maths, and they don't actually have an awareness of what they're eating. And this is where I was saying, and I actually would take this more from a business aspect, is like if you're not tracking, you're slacking. So if you're not tracking your numbers from a business perspective, you don't know what problem to fix. If you're not tracking your food from a nutrition standpoint, you actually don't know why you're not losing weight or how many calories you're eating or how to even fix that problem. So this is where I find fitness and business is so interlinked.
Yes, absolutely. I think we are all very good at justifying to ourselves or tricking ourselves, thinking, I don't eat that bad. My diet's not that bad. But you'll only really know when you track. And then you look across a week where things have gone off the rails a bit. But like you say, if you're not tracking, you're not going to know. So I think that's really good advice to people, to be tracking what they're doing. And I think that goes for both what we put in our mouth for eating and also for exercise. We might think we're pretty physically fit, but probably when we track, we might not be doing all the things we should be. That's really good. Many people struggle to balance their health and career. What advice do you have for time-poor professionals trying to get in shape?
The most important thing is to understand how you can be efficient with everything you do. And this is actually something that I've done from a business standpoint with a lot of our clients, is doing a time audit. So I literally have a spreadsheet with every 15 minutes, you just put in what you've done. And this is where people realize they have a lot more time than they actually think they have. But secondly is then understanding, okay, this is the time and the resources you can allocate to getting in shape. You actually don't need to work out as much as you think. So I would say if someone actually wants to get in shape, the base they need to do is maybe 2 weight training workouts a week, either full body or an upper lower body training session. And then in addition to that is actually the core fundamental thing that's more important than a workout. It's actually your nutrition. Nutrition is 80% the results when it comes to people getting the bodies they want. Most people, as I said earlier, actually like me as a child, we try and out exercise a bad diet, which physically cannot be done.
Yes, I think that is so true. I also think as you get older, that becomes more and more true because you can't exercise that much to offset what you're eating. So I think it's really good to know that. Explain to our audience a little bit about all the things that you're doing and how do you work with the different things or how do you work with clients? Let me put it that way.
From a fitness aspect or from a business aspect?
Well, both, I think.
Okay, so from a fitness aspect, what we essentially do is we help assess people's actual goals of what they want to achieve, where they're currently at, and then what's the bottleneck in terms of basically stopping them get in shape. And essentially, we then build a nutrition program, a workout program that fits around that, and then hold them accountable to do it, and then adjust that on a weekly basis so they keep seeing progress. Because the problem is most people don't realize there's something called metabolic adaptation, which is a fancy word for your metabolism getting used to what you're doing, and you need to constantly change your calories, your nutrition to continue to get progress. From a business aspect, the way we help people scale their businesses online is primarily through 3 methods, which is helping people book sales calls, close sales calls, and then keep their clients for a long period of time and get results. And that comes down from actually auditing their business of what they're doing now, what the bottlenecks are, what are the numbers that are holding them back, and then find the point of constraint and then fix that. And then the business will naturally grow until what the next point of constraint is.
That's amazing. This must keep you pretty busy looking at both the client side and then helping professionals run their businesses better.
We have a very skilled team, and I'm very fortunate to have built an amazing group of people who want to change lives and have a huge amount of impact. So we have a lot of presence in terms of what we do and a huge amount of second order consequences off of the back of that as well.
Excellent. Now we've come to the segment of our show where I will ask you some rapid fire questions, our version of a game show. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Is there one food that you absolutely cannot live without, even as a fitness coach?
Dark chocolate.
What is your favorite time of day to train?
The morning, probably like 8:30, 9 a.m. I don't like eating before working out, really.
What is one book or podcast that's had a big impact on your mindset?
The biggest From a mindset perspective, I would say Atomic Habits is probably the best book from a personal development mindset side of things. I'd say more from a business mindset, I'd probably say Alex Hormozi's podcast. I think it's called The Game.
What's your favorite part of living in Dubai?
I actually would say one of the things is something I didn't even realize before I moved here is the safety. Like, you don't have any concerns about your personal safety, anything being stolen, your house being broken into, anyone harming you. I would say that. And then if I was going to have a second one, the tax benefit's pretty huge as well.
In one word, how would you describe your journey so far?
Relentless, because it's been a longer journey than people probably realize, day in, day out.
What is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you get?
Some form of exercise.
Well, thank you for playing along. That was easy enough. Now I would like to ask you our signature green pill question. What green pill advice would you give to your younger self?
To believe in yourself and take action faster, and jump and the net will appear. Because I was in a position when I was an estate agent, I was probably only making £15,000-20,000 a month. And I delayed 6 months, probably leaving my full-time job because I was comfortable. But the comfort zone are where people's dreams go and die. And that's why I'm so adamant now about pushing people when I see they have the potential for greatness.
That's really good. Your story is an incredible example of what's possible when determination meets purpose. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. From transformation to entrepreneurship and helping others step into their best selves, you're doing truly impactful work. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you or learn about your coaching program?
The best two places to check me out, if you search Charlie Johnson on any platform, will come up. But I give the best business advice for anyone who has online business on YouTube for free. Better than most people's paid stuff. You just search Charlie Johnson scaling systems, it will come up. We also have our own podcast called The Charlie Johnson Show. And if you just type in Charlie Johnson Fitness on Instagram, that's my personal profile. You guys feel to drop me a message there or ask me any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I wish you all the very best, and I'll definitely be following your journey from here on in.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Matrix Green Pill podcast. If you enjoyed today's chat, don't forget to subscribe. Please leave us a 5-star review and join us again next week for more inspiring stories. Until then, stay consistent and remember, transformation starts with one small step.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.